Love is a beautiful emotion, but when it turns into obsession, it can become dangerous. There are countless stories of people who couldn't handle rejection, letting their wounded egos push them toward unimaginable crimes. This is one such story, where an innocent woman's refusal to accept a man's advances led to a horrifying act of cruelty. But what he didn't expect was that fate had its own way of delivering justice. Acid attacks are one of the most brutal forms of violence, leaving victims with permanent scars, not just on their bodies, but on their souls. The pain is unbearable, the trauma lifelong. Many survivors struggle to find the strength to move forward, their dreams and confidence shattered in an instant. Society often treats them as if they are to blame, when in reality, they are the victims of someone else's insecurities and cruelty. This story is a chilling reminder of the dark side of human nature. It is inspired by real events and will leave you questioning how far obsession can push someone. But this is not just a tale of tragedy, it is also one of justice. Because in this case, karma didn't wait long to strike back, and the punishment was far worse than anyone could have imagined. She was the kind of girl who lit up every room she entered, not just because of her beauty, but because of her warmth. Her kindness was effortless, her smile genuine. She had dreams bigger than the small town she lived in, hoping to build a future where she could make a difference. With a heart full of ambition and a mind focused on her goals, she had little time for distractions. But he saw her differently. To him, she wasn't just another girl. She was an obsession. He watched her from a distance at first, then grew bolder. He would wait outside her college, send her gifts, and flood her phone with messages. His interest wasn't love, it was possession. He convinced himself that if he tried hard enough, she would eventually say yes. But she never did. She made it clear she wasn't interested. Her polite refusals soon turned into firm rejections. She ignored his messages, returned his gifts, and told him to stay away. What should have ended there only escalated further. The more she rejected him, the more his ego burned. How dare she refuse him? He was convinced she was playing hard to get, that she was just testing his patience. When he realized she truly meant no, something inside him snapped. He no longer wanted her love. He wanted revenge. His mind twisted rejection into humiliation, and in his world, humiliation had only one answer: punishment. If she wouldn't be his, he would make sure no one else would want her either. And with that poisonous thought, his obsession turned into something far darker, something that would soon change both their lives forever. Days turned into weeks, and his anger only grew. Rejection wasn't something he could tolerate. His pride wouldn't allow it. He convinced himself that she had insulted him, that she had ruined his name. His thoughts became consumed with one thing: revenge. He no longer cared about her feelings, her dreams, or even her life. He wanted to leave a mark on her that she would carry forever. His plan was simple, cruel, and irreversible. He bought a bottle of acid from an illegal seller, gripping it tightly as if it were the answer to all his problems. He waited, watching her daily routine, knowing exactly when she would walk home alone. He followed her, his fingers tightening around the bottle, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then the moment came. She turned a corner, unaware of the horror waiting behind her. In a flash, he lunged forward and threw the liquid straight at her face. A second of silence followed, a second where the world seemed to stop. And then the pain hit. A blood-curdling scream tore through the air as the acid ate away at her skin. She fell to the ground, clawing at her burning face. her hands melting wherever the liquid touched. Her beautiful features, the ones he once claimed to love, were being destroyed before his eyes. Her screams turned into desperate gasps, her body writhing in agony. People around her froze, too shocked to react. Some turned away, unable to watch, but then a few brave souls ran toward her, splashing water on her face, trying to stop the acid from doing more damage. Someone screamed for an ambulance, others yelled for help, their voices drowning in the chaos. Minutes felt like hours before she was rushed to the hospital, her skin peeling, her eyes barely able to open. The pain was unbearable, but worse than the physical agony was the horror sinking into her heart. Her life had changed forever in a matter of seconds. And as she lay there, fighting for her life, he stood at a distance, watching. There was no remorse in his eyes, no regret. In his twisted mind, he had won. But what he didn't know was that this wasn't the end of the story, because karma was already on its way. Finished thinking. The hospital room was filled with the scent of antiseptic, but nothing could cleanse the pain she was enduring. The doctors worked tirelessly, their faces grim as they assessed the damage. The acid had burned deep, melting layers of her skin, leaving behind raw, exposed flesh. Her right eye was severely affected, and they weren't sure if they could save her vision. The next few hours were crucial. The first surgery was just the beginning. Skin grafts, reconstructive procedures, each one more painful than the last. The doctors did everything they could, but they knew the truth. No matter how skilled their hands were, they could never undo what had been done. The mirror, once a friend, became her worst enemy. The reflection staring back at her was unrecognizable, a cruel reminder of the life she had lost in a single moment. Her family was shattered. Her mother wept silently at her bedside, unable to find the words to comfort her daughter. Her father, usually strong and steady, looked 10 years older overnight. They had always protected her, but now they were powerless. And she felt like nothing more than a burden, a girl whose dreams had been reduced to ashes. Darkness consumed her. The nights were the worst. Silent screams echoing in her mind, memories of that moment replaying over and over. She refused to eat, refused to speak. What was the point? She wasn't the same person anymore. The thought of ending it all crept into her mind, a whisper that grew louder with each passing day. But then, something changed. A woman came to visit her, an activist who had once been in the same hospital bed, wearing the same scars. She had survived an acid attack too, but instead of letting it define her, she had risen from it. She looked at the broken girl lying before her and said, "He wanted to destroy you, but the real revenge is proving that he failed." Those words planted a seed. At first, it was just a flicker, a tiny ember buried beneath the ashes of her pain. But with time, it grew. She wasn't just a victim, she was a survivor. The man who did this to her wanted her to disappear, but she would do the opposite. She would rise. With newfound determination, she wiped her tears. She wasn't going to let him win. This was just the beginning of her fight back. He walked freely, his head held high, as if he had done nothing wrong. In his mind, he had taught her a lesson, put her in her place. When the police arrested him, there was no fear in his eyes, only arrogance. He knew how the system worked. He had connections, and he was sure he would walk away untouched. And he did. Within weeks, he was out on bail. The girl was still lying in a hospital bed, her face scarred forever, while he roamed the streets as if nothing had happened. Society whispered, but never acted. Some condemned him in hushed voices, while others shrugged, calling it a personal matter. The law, weak and slow, gave him the confidence to continue his life without guilt or remorse. But karma was watching, and karma never forgets. One night, as he rode his bike home, speeding through the empty roads, something went wrong. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe it was the weight of his own sins catching up to him. A truck appeared out of nowhere, its headlights blinding him. He lost control, skidding across the road, his body colliding with the rough pavement. And then the worst happened. The bike's fuel tank burst, flames engulfing him in an instant. By the time people rushed to help, it was too late. His once proud face, the same one he thought was superior to hers, was now unrecognizable. The same pain he had inflicted on her, the unbearable burning, was now his own curse. The doctors did what they could, but just like her, he would never look the same again. For the first time, he felt what she had felt. The stares of strangers, the whispers behind his back, the avoidance of people who once respected him. His so-called friends disappeared. His family, ashamed, refused to acknowledge him. The women he once boasted about impressing wanted nothing to do with him. His reflection became his nightmare. If not for the accident, maybe he would have lived his life believing he had won. But fate had a way of balancing things out. The same fire he had set for her had come back to consume him. And this time, there was no one to help him. No one to save him. This wasn't just karma, it was justice. At first, she hid from the world, afraid of the stares, the whispers, the pity in people's eyes. The scars on her face were a constant reminder of the pain she'd endured. But as time passed, she realized something powerful. She had survived. He had tried to destroy her, to take away her identity, but he had failed. She was still here, still breathing, and now she had a new purpose. With the support of her family and the activist who had once given her hope, she decided she wouldn't just live, she would fight. She joined hands with NGOs working to support acid attack survivors, speaking at events, sharing her story. At first, it was terrifying to step into the public eye, but the more she spoke, the stronger she felt. She was no longer just a victim, she was a warrior. Her courage caught the attention of the media. Social media platforms amplified her voice, and soon she became a symbol of resilience. People who had once turned away from her now looked up to her. Survivors from all over the country reached out, finding strength in her journey. She didn't just fight for herself, she fought for all the women who had suffered like her. She worked with lawmakers, demanding stricter punishment for acid attackers and better medical support for survivors. The same society that once saw her as broken now saw her as unstoppable. She had transformed her pain into power, her suffering into a movement. And as she stood before a crowd one day, addressing thousands, she smiled. Not because she had forgotten the past, but because she had conquered it. Her scars were no longer something to hide. They were proof of her survival, her strength, and her victory over the man who had tried to silence her. Real beauty, she had learned, wasn't in flawless skin or perfect features. It was in courage. It was in never giving up. And in that moment, she had never been more beautiful. Acid attacks are not crimes of passion. They are crimes of power, fueled by toxic masculinity and entitlement. When a man believes he has the right to destroy a woman's life simply because she rejected him, it is not love. It is an act of cowardice, a desperate attempt to control what was never his to own. Too many survivors are left to suffer in silence, their attackers walking free or facing minimal punishment. This must change. Laws need to be stricter, justice needs to be swifter, and society needs to stop treating these women as broken. They are not victims. They are warriors who have endured unimaginable pain and still chosen to rise. This story is not just about cruelty, it is about resilience. It is about how the human spirit, when pushed into darkness, can still find light. It is about karma, the invisible force that ensures no crime goes unpunished. The man who thought he had won eventually lost everything, and the woman he tried to destroy, she became stronger than ever. He tried to destroy her beauty, but in the end, karma made him suffer the real scars.